Since January 2023, over 16 states across the U.S. and 146 individual campuses have begun the process of cutting back on their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In a majority of Republican states, lawmakers have initiated efforts to remove DEI programs from institutions of higher learning, citing that many of these programs are discriminatory to those left out. Supporters of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs have fought back, saying that the initiatives are necessary to promote diversity on campuses and facilitate success to those from different backgrounds. Specifically, many supporters have said that the efforts to remove DEI programs affect Black and brown people the most, as these programs foster inclusion, recruit, and retain people of color. These pushbacks to DEI come following the Supreme Court decision that overturned affirmative action last year in July. Some clear examples: in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill which banned DEI offices, diversity statements, and identity-based preferences in employment at public institutions of higher learning, which impacted 10 campuses across the state. In Idaho, North Dakota, and North Carolina, each state banned the use of diversity statements in hiring at public universities, but North Carolina and North Dakota's legislative efforts went a step further, banning mandatory DEI training on college campuses. Utah's Governor Spencer Fox banned DEI offices, mandatory DEI training, identity-based preferences, and diversity statements, while Texas's Governor Greg Abbott banned all of those and funding for DEI efforts on public campuses. 9 other states currently have legislation proposed and waiting in state legislatures across the U.S. I was able to sit down with Sasha Thompson, the founder and CEO of the Equity Equation, to discuss why these policies are being enacted. Why are we seeing a pushback and even elimination, flat out of DEI programs in some institutions of higher education?
I mean, honestly, I think it's been a co-opting. What has happened is historically, DEI efforts, multicultural affairs, all of that has been around on college campuses since the 1960s. What we are seeing right now is this marketing effort to redefine what diversity, equity, and inclusion are. And so for a lot of the folks that are anti-DEI, they're honestly using it as a way to say, like, to really focus on race and ethnicity when DEI is so much more. And so rather than saying, well, we don't want to support the Black and brown people, they're saying it's a DEI thing. If we look back, it was woke, right? So it was this anti-woke. And then, before that, it was around CRT. Before that, it was, Black Lives Matter. So it is really just this iteration. And what it is folks that feel like DEI is becoming divisive or has been divisive, when in reality, DEI has been created to create community, right? It's created to bring equity to the forefront. And so, one of the best ways that I've heard this explained is people that have always had power and privilege are starting to feel ostracized in some way. And so the only way that they can kind of push back is to use that privilege and power. And so that's what we're seeing, right? If I'm not included, then I'm going to use the power that I have to dismantle this so that I feel like I'm still kind of on top of the world and I still have the power that I have, when in actuality, they're disenfranchising themselves in so many ways.
So what kind of impacts do these eliminations have on marginalized students as well as just the vast student population in general, whether they're marginalized or not?
So I think there's several things that happen with this. One, again, it divides that community, right? There's power in numbers. And so when you start to dismantle DEI and these efforts and the opportunity for students to find community, right, you start to silence their voices. And so that is a big part of this. The other thing, I think there's secondary effects that people are not necessarily thinking about. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, like I said at the top, is so many different areas, right? The identities of who we are as individuals. We all have different identities. Some of them may be marginalized aspects of ourselves, some of them may not. So for example, yes, I am a Black woman, and oftentimes that is marginalized. Those are marginalized communities, but I'm able-bodied, right? And so there's a privilege with that. There are things that I just don't need to think about because I am temporarily able-bodied. And so what ends up happening is folks that may be very marginalized in so many different aspects, you're starting to pull resources, you're starting to pull support from them, especially at a time where they're starting to discover themselves. I want people to just watch what is happening very closely in legislation, because what is happening does have a ripple effect, right? And it does impact people. And we have to get back to the humanity of who we are. Our diversity is a gift. It is not something that should be seen as a threat. And that's how it's being positioned, right? Our diversity is what makes us beautiful as a country. And I just want to leave with this story, because I think it's one that impacted me, and I want people to really think about. A couple of weeks ago, I was standing talking to a woman, a trans woman, who said to me, "I am illegal in 2 states." And in telling that story, what she said prior to her transition was she served this country honorably, right, for over 20 years. And so, someone who's put their life on the line to fight for our freedoms, to fight for democracy, right, is now not even acknowledged in 2 of our states, right? And so that is the power of all of this work, right? Is we have to remember the humanity of who we are. And so what is happening on college campuses? We are human beings with lives and feelings and emotions, and all of these things impact us and how we show up. And so I just want people to remember the humanity of that, because it is so very important. And it may not impact you today, but it may impact someone you care about tomorrow. And so just making sure that we keep that in mind.
Thank you to Sasha Thompson from the Equity Equation for that interview. For Morning Wake Up Call, I'm Cameron Bowden, WRHU.